Warsaw is home to nearly 1.8 million people, around 5% of Poland's population. But its reach goes far beyond numbers. This city generates nearly 18% of the country's total GDP, making it not only the capital in name, but in economic weight, innovation, and influence. And the country it anchors, Poland, is no longer a peripheral player. Its economy now exceeds the combined GDP of all the Eastern European countries it was once merely considered a part of. It is a city of glass and steel, of commerce and code, of new rhythms and renewed ambition. But beneath this modern surface, there is the oddest feeling that history has been written twice in the Old Town. Completely and meticulously rebuilt after its almost complete destruction during the war, it is odd to think that the old market square in its current form is not even as old as my own parents. The historian Tony Judd, in his monumental work called Post-War about Europe's emergence from World War II, warned that memory, especially national memory, is never neutral. It's a tool, a weapon, sometimes a comfort. It can serve truth, but it can also serve power. Judd showed that post-war Europe, while rebuilding, was also rewriting, keeping some things in their national story and editing some things out. Nations recast themselves as victims, martyrs, or righteous heroes, even when the truth is more tangled. Memory, he said, was not just remembrance, it was politics. The Polish poet Czesław Miłosz may be the closest thing we have to the voice of Poland's modern soul. But even he was ambiguous about the reconstruction of the Old Town. He recognized the impulse, the longing for continuity, for beauty, for restoration, but he also feared the risk of illusion, of mistaking imitation for authenticity. Miłosz knew that ruins can warn, but replicas can soothe, and sometimes too much. Leszek Kołakowski, the philosopher of Polish paradoxes, never fully stated his views on the reconstruction, but we can imagine them. He, who had seen truth distorted by dogma and beauty co-opted by ideology, would likely have seen the danger in both forgetting and remembering the wrong way. He might have asked, what are we really rebuilding? A city or a story we need to believe? Warsaw is built on this tension. After 1944, more than 85% of the city lay in ruins. Entire districts were leveled, deliberately, systematically. And yet the old town stands, not as a relic preserved, but as an idea reconstructed, stone by stone, from paintings, photographs, and memory. A city rebuilt not in defiance of history, but in dialogue with it. In the end, it doesn't matter what philosophers or historians say. What matters is what people did. And the people of Warsaw, those who returned to the rubble, made their decision clear. They wanted their city back. Not just any city, not something modern, efficient, or new. They wanted some part of the old city. They wanted to rebuild what should not have been destroyed. The reconstruction of Warsaw's Old Town was not driven by nostalgia, but by collective will. Architects turned to 18th century paintings by Bernardo Bellotto, the court painter to the last Polish king, treating his art as a form of architectural record. Funding didn't come from the Marshall Plan, which bypassed communist Poland, but from the people themselves. Brick by brick donations, national fundraising campaigns, and a special tax, the National Fund for the Reconstruction of Warsaw. It was an act of civic imagination and defiance, a resurrection of identity from blueprints, ruins, and sheer social will. Few cities have done anything like it. Coventry, Dresden, Rotterdam, they each made different choices, but Warsaw chose to restore its own reflection. And not everyone believed it was the right thing to do. There was resentment in other cities, including Gdansk, even Krakow. which had also suffered but had received much less attention. Some said rebuilding the old town was sentimental, wasteful, a theatrical illusion when Poland needed coal, roads, and steel. Others warned that the communist state would claim credit, that this act of cultural recovery might become a propaganda victory for Moscow. But in the end, it wasn't Moscow's victory, it wasn't the Communist Party's, it was Warsaw's. The people won because they reclaimed something few post-war cities ever fully recovered: a shared, ceremonial, beautiful public space. A space not just for tourism or commerce, but for gathering, for ritual, for belonging. A space where everyone instinctively knows why they are there, because old towns belong to everyone. Chattering intelligentsia, people watchers, buskers, market sellers, the well-to-do and pretenders, the pompous and the modest and the merely curious, and even the odd tourist. And as time has passed, so too has the story matured. Poles have begun to expand the national narrative, beyond victimhood, resilience, martyrdom, and freedom, towards something harder, the courage to examine one's own moral shadow. The vanished Jewish Warsaw, 1/3 of the city before the war, did not only disappear because of Nazi violence. It vanished too in the fog of silence, confusion, helplessness, fear. The Warsaw Ghetto will not be rebuilt. Nothing will be restored. And this is not from neglect, but from reverence. Not everything that is lost must reappear, and some absences honor that which cannot be remade. The old town remembers by reconstruction. The ghetto remembers via a sacred absence. Both are forms of urban memory. Both are special kinds of decision. Sometimes people must be able to see and feel the past, so that bias doesn't erase what they don't want to know. And more importantly, we must see it together. Shared evidence, shared space. That is how memory becomes real. That is why the old town matters. There's a story that James Joyce, speaking of his native Dublin, once said that if the city were destroyed, it could be rebuilt, brick by brick, from the pages of his novels. That idea, at first glance, seems literary, almost whimsical, but it speaks to something profound. The way a city, a people, and a national consciousness become bound together in art, in space, in memory. The way imagination can preserve a map when reality is torn apart. In Warsaw, that imagination became stone. This is how a city rebuilds not only its streets, it is how civilization, despite everything, begins again.